Welcome back, everyone, to Afrodo Reviews. And on this channel, I help you decide. Not that. Is this book worth reading over second breakfast? Or does it deserve the fiery pits of Mount Doom? That's what we're here to decide. Today's book, if you can't tell from my wonderfully blocky appearance or the thumbnail, is another Minecraft book. The Lost Journals was written by Mur Lafferty and published on July 9th, 2019, which is personally kind of funny to me for reasons I'm not going to go into. There isn't too much background on this book, at least no more than the others I presented before, so let's just skip to the start and get the ratings card out. And let's move on to the cover. And man, still great covers. If there's one thing you can never disparage the Minecraft books for, is the fact that these covers are glorious. I just love the art style of them so much. The brilliant use of contrasting colors, the gorgeous art that fits the style of the game, and even the fact that most of the pictures do fit the actual stuff inside the book. Mwah! This one even gets bonus points from me because if you open up the pages on the inside, you actually see several sketched arts of nether mobs, which fits the theme of the book being the Lost Journals. All in all, the cover is wonderful, and I have no negative things to say about it. Genuinely. I guess I could make an argument that there should be a heavier use of orange and red over green, given that the fact that the book takes place mostly in the nether, but still, it's extremely petty complaint. In any case, you might be asking yourself, well, what's this book about? Well, the dust cover of this book would have you believe. Max and Allison are proof that differences don't stand in the way of a friendship. Max is always on the lookout for a new adventure, even if it means getting in trouble, while Allison prefers to follow the rules. But both of them are fascinated by the beat-up old journal Max finds and the strange gate its secretive owner, the Enchanter, describes. A portal to an otherworldly realm of danger called the Nether. After they use the journal's instructions to craft the portal, Max and Allison squabble over whether to remain safe in the overworld or to journey into the Nether to find the Enchanter, until a fateful accident makes the decision for them. Trapped in a scary new world, Max and Allison find an ally in Freya, a fierce warrior who had been living in the Nether with her beloved wolf, Bunnybiter. With Freya's help, and with the clues that lie in the pages of the mysterious journal, Max and Allison embark on a quest to find the Enchanter, even as the Nether pushes their skills and their friendship to the test, or to the limit. And well, okay, so this one is a little interesting to talk about. Because the cover is accurate, really nothing is wrong with it. And while I could argue a couple of spots tend to betray the spirit of what's happening in the book for the technicality of what's happening, it would be a very minor complaint. I think this is funny because the physical book definitely wants to keep the Enchanter this mysterious, enigmatic individual, giving the impression that Allison and Max, our two main characters, are going to learn about him throughout the adventure as they follow their writings. Only for a twist later on to reveal in the book that is a lot more complicated than that. Now, ordinarily, I would wait to the review section and talk about it in my spoilers section, except that if you were to look at this book on Goodreads, it outright spoils the identity of the Enchanter in the first line. This also leaves me in an interesting spot where technically, the Goodreads profile is a lot more inaccurate than the book, surprisingly, when it does tend to be a little bit more of the opposite. Again, neither are actually necessarily wrong in what the book's about, but the Goodreads profile betrays the spirit a lot more than the book does. But enough about that. The real question, what did I think of this book? Well, I think that the official Minecraft novels are still way better than they have any right to be. Even if I do admit this is probably the weakest entry by far. So all in all, I stand by a good majority of my compliments that have been for the other ones as well. The story is actually engaging, the book actually feels like it has effort put in. Compared to The Crash, I do feel like Mur Lafferty is much more knowledgeable about Minecraft, even if I'm not entirely sure they actually played it. There's a few small errors, like at one point our characters are spawning water blocks in the nether to make obsidian. It's that kind of mistake. It's been common knowledge for a while that any water in the nether instantly evaporates. Though in earlier editions, I actually was able to get around it by bringing an ice block and then letting it melt naturally. I once built an entire working farm in the nether using that method. I also think the story has a lot of interesting ideas of how certain Minecraft items would work and remove yourself from the game setting. I'll have a little more critical things to say on the book, how the book approaches being a Minecraft book in a couple seconds here. But for the moment, things like the Eye of Ender basically being a giant eyeball that actually moves and looks around was an interesting touch to the item that's otherwise static in the game. I also like the various ways that the enchanting is looked at from the perspective of actually being in the world rather than just as a mechanic, which is something we'll be talking about in my next review a lot more, giving it a very mystical feel as the type of books on the bookshelf can influence the type of enchantment. Basically, if you were to put the romance books all around it as opposed to action books, you would get a completely different enchantment. I like that approach. That's actually a really interesting idea. But overall, I think the book follows mostly in the, okay, it's kind of good category versus the, actually, this is pretty good that all the others fall into. I think one of the reasons I would say this is probably because the approach in writing the world of Minecraft is the least interesting in this one. You see, in the previous books, how the characters were in Minecraft had different takes. Max Brooks wrote the first one, The Island, as if he had been isekai'd into the world. The setting was a real modern-day person stuck in a world that operated on game logic. Tracy Baptiste, however, approaches it as a game, because it is a game in that world. A game that still operates in the future with mods capable of VR headsets and neural scans, but still a game. This allowed the characters to experience the game, but make it still feel like they were inside the danger, even if it's fictional in the world itself. Then you had Catherine Valente, who approached to make it take place from the point of view of people inside the fantasy world. This wasn't a game to them, so everything in the world just makes sense. And at no point do we have the book constantly poking fun at the game logic presented. This is just logic to the characters. This book tries to be a blend of book 1 and book 4, in that it's a fantasy world that has characters that exist in it, how these are real people who have to deal with the mobs of Minecraft as if they're real threats in their everyday life. They don't respond if they die, they aren't aware of any game-like mechanics to them because that's just how the world works. However, the problem is that it also keeps the game-like mechanic feel to it. The wolf, Bunny Biter, teleports to Freya's side at one point. She states that eating food will cure Bunny Biter of any wounds, and the way the character builds is also from the game. This unfortunately creates a weird in-between where the characters are both capable of game logic or not, depending on the setting. For example, at one point, they're debating how to cross a sea of lava to get to a small island that they think the enchanter is on. Now, if you're playing the game, the solution is easy. Just mine a bunch of netherrack and build a bridge across. Easy as pie. Except this game isn't a game to them. So clearly it would be more effort than just digging up a bunch of the hell dirt and shaping it into a bridge. So they work out this complicated plan of wearing a mix of fire-resistant gear and drinking fire-resistant potions so that they can swim across, which ends with Max relying too much on his fire-resistant gear and having to be carried across the rest of the way by Freya and Allison, who chose instead to rely on the potions. Very clear example of how to use the idea that this is their real world and they can't just construct a bridge out of nowhere using game logic. Except that they proceed to do this exact plan to escape later on. Question: if they can build a bridge to escape the island, why didn't they do it to build it towards the island? They would have needed to cross the lava again on the way back anyways, right? So why didn't they just open with this? But then this also creates an issue later on when they're in a new place and find a 1x1 obsidian block staircase that they're all dreading climbing. Because in real world logic, walking on that is a trick of balance and they don't want to fall off while also being exposed to the mobs around them. Except you've already established at this point that you can use Minecraft game logic. So why don't they just mine some netherrack and build onto the staircase to make it wider and blocked off? This question comes up a lot throughout the book. The climax is them fighting off a horde of gas and struggling to light a nether portal under fire. So why don't they just build a house around themselves and the portal? Even in the book, it's acknowledged that gas won't attack them if they can't see them. Though again, this is because in their world, it has to have an explanation, and that's they're too lazy to actually seek you out afterwards rather than being an AI limitation of the game.
The tree that's fallen and is blocking our path? Yeah, that's the one.
Sorry, are you serious? How is that blocking our path?
I get the feeling that what it was trying to do was more along the lines of the Minecraft story mode, where building and crafting is largely the same, but the characters still live in the world. But there are still rules to how things work in Minecraft story mode. I think this book would have been better if it just committed one way or the other. As it stands, it's trying to do this weird middle ground, and it's making the book feel like it's breaking the immersion of the book constantly. It would be like if all of a sudden I was recording most of this review in Minecraft, and then suddenly we cut back to me sitting in front of my couch reviewing this book like I normally do. It would just break the rules of how I normally do these things for no explained reason. And for those of you actually watching my review, instead of putting it on in the background, you'd be questioning, oh, hey, why does he do that? I mean, it would just be stupid to do that. Another issue I had with this book is that, well, it just doesn't trust its audience. And I know that seems like a weird complaint to aim at a Minecraft novel, clearly aiming for more of a middle school audience, but when this book contains themes like being the sole survivor of your family after a tragedy takes all their lives and learning to deal with the trauma that comes with that, I think it's a little fair to ask for a bit more trust from the author to her audience. Especially when the previous book dealt with coming to terms with survivor's guilt and denial over loss. And the book that would be published next deals with the twist that the world of Minecraft in its setting is cyclical, and each slaying of the Ender Dragon resets the timeline with a dark god of the end facilitating our main character's survival despite the twist. I think it's a little fair to say I think the author should have trusted her audience enough not to feel the need to spell out every little thing. This book had a habit of just telling me things instead of showing me. How do I know that Freya is reluctant to leave the Nether because doing so means she won't be distracted by constant life and death scenarios, and thus be forced to acknowledge the death of her parents? Because the book flat out tells me that's what Freya is doing. It just feels weird going from something as heavy as The Crash, which trusted its audience to get its theme, to this one, which has very similar themes, but feels like it needs to walk over and hold our reader's hand and be like, it's okay, I'll explain all the themes to you, you stupid little kid. Another sort of complaint I can lob at this book is that this one is definitely written with children in mind. Why? Because it has the same problem I mentioned with Grey Griffin so many years ago. It doesn't let our characters be in danger, despite the fact that it's constantly putting them in danger. Solving and both putting them in danger with no satisfactory build-up or conclusion. For example, shortly after being trapped in the Nether, Allison goes ahead to scout, only for Max to appear sometime later being chased by a group of pigmen chicken jockeys.
Chicken jockey!
Why? I don't know. Anyways, after they've been chased long enough to facilitate the plot point of them losing their way from their portal, Freya suddenly appears out of nowhere and saves them. Now this one, I can't necessarily disparage that much. Obviously, you need to introduce your last main character, right? But then Max also ends up with an enchanted golden sword to fight at the last second, helping them fight off the zombie pigman mob. At one point, Allison is nicked by a wither skeleton and gets the wither sickness. Oh no, they have to save her. Okay, well, they do that pretty easy. Max just goes inside, gets some milk from his stash that just happened to be there, and even though he's a terrible friend and gets distracted reading journals and rifling through stuff for what's implied to be hours, he still happens to make it back in time that not only is Allison fine, but no one gets mad at him for doing something so selfish and irresponsible. Oh, the characters get across the lava and find out that this mob horde that they were worried about is actually trapped in a glass cage. Oh, cool, that means they're safe from danger, right? Well, Mac climbs into the treehouse, but oh no, there's a group of Mindermen in there, and he accidentally stared one right in the face. Okay, well that's fine. Add a little bit of danger, and Endermen have been spawning in the Nether for a few editions now. It kind of makes sense. And then, but then, by complete coincidence, over by the glass cage, Freya happened to be mining some netherrack for no explained reason, and was just so happened to be hit by a random mob that appears out of nowhere, which throws her aim off as she's mining, and caused her to break a big enough hole in the glass cage to release the horde of mobs. Which again, goes back to the game logic and the in-world logic colliding. Minecraft game logic that unless she was using a diamond pick with efficiency 4 on it, Freya would have been able to stop on the first glass brick. Meaning that she would have had a 1x1 hole maybe, but nothing bigger. But in world logic it would make sense because she broke an entire doorway because she broke glass and it just shattered into perfect shape. Oh, and the characters are about to creep up on the last known hiding spot of the Enchanter, worried about their only way into it. Well, out of nowhere, a magma cube appears. Now, there's no build up to it, it just drops down out of nowhere. Despite in-game, you can hear them coming from a mile away. And the book treats the magma cube as one of the most dangerous mobs in Nether, which, again, another conflict between in-game and in-world. Obviously, in world, a cube of living magma would be far more dangerous than it is in the game. But in game, they're probably one of the most manageable nether mobs. Anyways, the point is, Max, not the nether veteran Freya, realizes the magma cubes are just like slimes and you can kill them just like slimes. So they fight and kill it. But why couldn't they have just done that before? Why does it being like a slime in the overworld and breaking it apart in smaller chunks suddenly make it more manageable? You still have to kill the big magma cube first, and it spawns smaller ones from its corpse. So, why is it suddenly... Whatever, I'm getting lost here. The point is that it has the problem the characters are constantly in danger, but the book never lets you feel like they're in danger. And kids' book can let kids be in danger to a degree that you can feel it a little. The Arctic Code I praised because it was a kids' book, but it let the main character feel like she was in danger when she was in over her head. It might be serviceable enough for kids, maybe, but I think even a kid would eventually just start shaking their head at how easily the protagonists get out of these sticky situations. Especially since the fight scenes of these books are not written well. It isn't quite on par with the terribleness of the God of War novelization or Halo the Flood, where every fight scene could be summed up with, and then the protagonist goes here, weapon attack, the bad guys die. The protagonist goes here, weapon attack, the bad guys die. But there's really no fight scene that flows well, and most of the time the author is more interested in ending the fight scene as soon as possible, rather than giving you something that really feels nice to just watch. In the end, I'd probably just give this book a 6 out of 10. Like I said, of the 4 I've read now, this is easily the worst. And unlike when I say that about The Crash, I don't mean it in the sense that... And I say that even looking back on my old The Island review and noting that I have rated this a little higher than that. Because looking back, I think I was a little too harsh on The Island review. I still think it's kind of a redundant book to read if you're at all familiar with the Minecraft world. But at the end of the day, it was kind of one of those, again, if you're reading the first Minecraft book, doesn't it make sense that the first Minecraft book should be like a first playthrough of Minecraft? But at the end of the day, this book just doesn't really utilize any of its aspects very well. I think this is a book that kids will like in the moment, but it's a book they'll forget they ever read as time goes on. As opposed to something like The Crash or The End, where I could see that actually sticking with them for some time. That might be something they look back on in like 10 years from now and think, was that book as good as I remember, or is it just nostalgia? And they'll probably revisit it. Whereas The Lost Journals is definitely one of the ones I see them being like, oh yeah, I guess that was a book. at the end of the day, it's really just a Minecraft novel. I can't be too harsh on it. It's not offensively bad. It's nothing like that. I won't even say don't read it. It's a fine enough read if you do want to read through all of the Minecraft novels, which, weirdly enough, I can still recommend. Even if you aren't in the age demographic. They're not bad books. Even I'm 4 in and I can still say that, which makes me very proud. But it's just one of those, it's fine. With that being said, just remember, with every book comes an adventure, and every adventure is worth having, even the bad ones. See you later, everyone.